You won't believe how a single silent moment in a crowded room revealed years of secret betrayal and ignited a fire that had almost gone out for millions. What if the truth could mend a nation that had almost lost its path? Tier 1 viewers, this is a tale of bravery, redemption, and the strength that comes with standing up when it counts the most. Press play to get in. In a whispered room where authority once seemed unattainable, a lone voice stood to challenge decades of covert betrayal. What if a country's trust is broken, and one unwary moment has the courage to mend it? Can the pain, however bitter, be the fire that mends a broken nation? Tonight, we'll step into the story of a leader who refused to look away, a man who carried millions of hopes on his shoulders, and the reckoning that changed everything. In a dramatic congressional hearing televised nationwide, Representative Jaime Raskin aimed at President Donald Trump. It appeared he had orchestrated this moment for some time, a grand public humiliation. Trump, however, America's 47th president, didn't even flinch. He struck back with a rejoinder so incisive that Raskin was left utterly speechless. The transaction went viral on the web in a matter of minutes. That morning, the Capitol was abuzz with more commotion than ever. Flashing cameras, reporters standing in close whisper, and across America, millions of individuals could not look away from their television screens. Representative Raskin adjusted his tie on the House floor, believing that this would be his moment to shine. "President Trump," he started, his tone dripping with contempt. "You've deceived the American people long enough. Today, I'm going to let the world see what you truly are." Trump remained motionless, his expression unreadable, his iconic red tie impeccably knotted. Secret Service agents behind him peered around the room with eyes as keen as hawks. "He's actually doing this on live television," a junior aide breathed to her friend. "Affirmative," the colleague responded, just as softly. "But he has no clue what's about to hit him." Raskin began a burning rant, charging Trump with corruption and lies. Some chamber members began to nod their heads in agreement, apparently agreeing. Others simply stared quietly, not knowing where this was going. Throughout it, Trump didn't even lean forward in his chair. Then, he leaned forward a bit, fixed his eyes on Raskin, a lion-like stare as if analyzing prey. No one had any idea the fiery minute that would rock the nation. For 15 consecutive minutes, Raskin threw accusation upon accusation. He referred to Trump as a dangerous imposter, a man who wasn't fit to guide the country. "I'm here to expose your lies," Raskin shouted, pounding the desk so hard his papers jumped. "America deserves better than your circus of corruption." The entire room fell silent. Every camera swung around to catch Trump's reaction. Would he lash out in fury? Would he walk out in protest? But Trump didn't move. His hands rested calmly on the table. Slowly, a faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "Are you done, Jaime?" he finally asked, his tone icy and razor-sharp enough to cut through the silence. Raskin began to open his mouth to respond, but Trump raised a single finger. "Sit down." Gaspings ran through the assembly. Even Raskin came to an abrupt stop, taken aback. "You came here thinking you'd humiliate me," Trump said, his tone turning to ice. "But you're about to remember why the good people of America sent me back to this office." He paused just long enough for the tension to thicken. "And trust me, Jaime, this is going to hurt." The crowd erupted in urgent whispers. What on earth was Trump about to reveal? Slowing to his feet, Trump dipped his hand into the inside of his jacket and produced a creased paper. The cameras closed in on his every gesture. "Jaime," he declared, holding the document aloft, "you charge me with corruption." He pointed to the large screens behind the speaker's platform. "But what about this?" The screens sprang into action. Lines of wire transfers flashed, offshore bank accounts all traced back to Raskin. This is evidence, Trump bellowed down the hall, that Jaime Raskin stole millions from corrupt foreign groups while abandoning honest Americans. He turned to face the shocked chamber. He mustered our farmers. He vetoed benefits for our vets. And he assumed nobody would ever discover it. Gasp rippled through the room. Raskin's complexion went white. Lies, he bellowed. This is a setup. But Trump's voice just kept getting louder. You are an embarrassment, Jaime. And today, the American people are going to see everything you have done. You wanted a fight? Well, here it is. Trump thumped the document on the table. It was then that the room just erupted into reactions. Some lawmakers were yelling out in shock, while the others jumped to their feet and started cheering wildly. Across America, audiences hung on in suspense. Some cried, emotionally believing their president was battling for them once more. And this was only the beginning. Raskin gripped the podium with white knuckles, as behind Trump, giant screens rolled through photographic proof, bank records, signed agreements, one after another. Jaime believed he was able to conceal all of this in the shadows, Trump declared, his voice firm and deliberate. But light always seeps in. The whispers began to rise in volume. Even those in Raskin's own party began exchanging nervous glances. This is all staged, Raskin bellowed, pounding his fist on the podium for the second time. A desperate president attempting to distract America from his failures. Trump did not yell back. He just faced the room and in nearly a whisper asked, Do these look fake to you? Or is this just what betrayal of America actually looks like? Hashtags such as #RaskinExposed and #TrumpFightsBack trended on Twitter within minutes. In a tiny living room somewhere, an older woman wiped tears away from her eyes, watching it all go down. I didn't vote for him last time, the woman breathed, her voice trembling. But he's fighting for us. He's actually fighting for us. Trump stood face to face with Raskin. Hold on, Jaime, he said calmly. This is merely the first chapter. Raskin took a step back as Trump advanced, his hand grasping yet another folder. Let's hear about the veterans you betrayed, Trump snarled, his voice cracking with raw emotion. While brave men and women fought for this nation, you took the money that was supposed to help them and put it in your own pockets. Gasps erupted through the room. A woman in the back of the room started to quietly weep. Lies, Raskin screamed, his face flushing. You're twisting everything. Trump slammed his hand on the table so loudly that it resonated. Twisting? He retorted. Or telling the truth America wants to hear? The screens behind them sprang back to life. Images were displayed. Pictures of dilapidated veterans' facilities, juxtaposed with proof of Raskin's expensive holidays in Europe. This, Trump said, sweeping a hand toward the proof, this is what betrayal is. This is the man who accuses me of being corrupt. In offices and living rooms throughout the nation, citizens gawked in shocked silence. Others cried. Some gnashed their teeth in outrage. A shaking reporter at last found voice, her own voice a mere whisper. Mr. President, why are you unveiling this now? Trump faced her, and for the first time, his voice cracked just a bit. Because, he said, catching his breath, the American people deserve justice, and I will give it to them, no matter how hard anyone tries to stop me. The room fell so silent that it seemed as if time had stopped. Even Raskin didn't respond. He simply stood there, his mouth opening and closing as a fish gasping for air. Trump's face softened as he gazed directly into the cameras. To every American watching this, he began, his voice low and resolute, I know you're tired of being lied to, tired of the games, the corruption, the betrayal. You deserve leaders who care more about you than about lining their own pockets. In a small living room, a young mother clutched a pile of baby clothes to her chest. A single tear slid down her cheek. Somebody who would say it, she breathed, to no one in general. Trump's voice came more forcefully once more, echoing through the chamber. Jaime believed that today was the day that he embarrassed me, Trump declared. But I stand here, not for myself, but for you. For each neglected worker, each struggling family, each abandoned soldier. I fight because I love this nation more than my own life. And then he fixed Raskin directly with a finger. Try and kill me, he stated, his voice firm and icy. But today, you killed yourself. The chamber imploded. There were cries, some clapping, others jeering. Journalists fought to put in their breaking reports. America was in flames, and Trump was not done. When the cacophony at last started to die down, Trump's gaze darkened. He raised the second folder higher. Jaime, he said, his voice weighted with sorrow. You thought the veteran scandal was bad? He hesitated, waiting for the point to penetrate. Let's discuss the children. The screens flickered to life once more, this time revealing a long list of charities that Raskin had made public donations to. Trump's team had traced the money, though, and found money discreetly transferred to offshore accounts. You stood on stages, Trump declared, his voice slow and deliberate, weeping your crocodile tears for poor children, while you took their future away in secret. One young congresswoman covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes full of tears. This is not about politics anymore, Trump went on. This is about the soul of our nation, and you people have been corrupting it. Raskin's face turned bright red. He shouted back, voice cracking. None of this is true! You're lying! Trump didn't waver. Then why, Jaime, he demanded, are there parents of those children here today? Parents who trusted you, who are here begging for answers. The cameras turned to the gallery, where there was a small cluster of people sitting together. One woman grasped a framed picture of her son and wept quietly into her hand. The silence became so profound that it felt like the entire country heard her weep. She raised her tear-stained face. Mr. Raskin, she said tremulously, my son died waiting for the aid your charity vowed. But the funds never arrived. Where did they go? Raskin's lips trembled. I don't know who you are, he stuttered. Trump's hand came down on the table again. Don't you dare say you don't know, he bellowed. That boy's blood is on your hands. The gallery erupted. Some wept openly, others shouted with outrage. All over America, families watched at home, tears streaming down their faces as Trump's voice shook just barely. I became president again to fight for them, Trump declared, pointing at the woman with the photo. Not for power, not for fame, but for every forgotten American who suffered because of selfish men like you. Raskin attempted to speak. Nothing emerged. Raskin's throat parched. His heart beat so heavily he could hardly hear it. For the first time in years, he no longer appeared confident or imposing. He appeared tiny. And Trump? He towered, not only as a politician, but as a parent, a warrior, and a champion of the voiceless. As Trump's words resonated through the hall, phones throughout the country flashed with messages from watchers. God bless President Trump. Jaime Raskin needs to step down. I just can't stop crying. He's fighting for us. Raskin made his way back onto the floor on shaky legs. His face was white, his skin slick with sweat. He parted his lips, perhaps to speak, perhaps to defend himself, but nothing emerged. Trump faced the cameras once more. America, he said. You sent me here to drain the swamp. And that's exactly what I'll do. Even if I have to stand alone, I will never stop fighting for you. The chamber erupted. Applause rolled through the room like thunder. Even some of Trump's usual political rivals quietly lowered their heads in respect. And in households all over the nation, individuals wiped away their tears. They felt something they had not felt in some time. Hope. This was no longer just about politics. It was about more. It was about a movement, and Jaime Raskin had just become the face of all that movement was in opposition to. The chamber became quiet. All that was left was the soft hum of cameras and the desperate scratch of the pens of reporters. Trump's eyes blazed, his face set in determination as he stood tall and unyielding. "Jaime," he started, low but unshakable, "I was not going to say this. I did not wish to cause hurt to your family, but you pushed me to it." A shiver went through the room. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even Raskin looked taken aback. Then Trump held up his hand, and the screen behind him changed again. It revealed private emails and messages this time, communications between Raskin and foreign lobbyists. "You vowed to block signature American manufacturing projects," Trump declared, "and in return they stuffed your offshore pockets with millions. You betrayed our workers. You betrayed our families." There were gasps in the room. A shout of "Traitor!" came from the gallery. Raskin's mouth trembled. This isn't real. It's fake," he shouted, but his voice cracked in fear. Trump did not shout back. He did not even raise his voice. "Jaime," he stated softly, "when you betrayed them, you betrayed us all, and America will never forgive you for it." In a still kitchen, a grandmother put her hand against her chest, tears in her eyes. "This man is saving our country," she breathed. Trump turned back to the camera. "America," he said, his voice growing emotional. "I've watched too many good people hurt while politicians such as this man become wealthy. I've watched mothers who can't feed their children, veterans sleeping on the sidewalks, factories closing, while people like Jaime Raskin do favors for foreign lobbies rather than working for their own." Raskin pounded his hand on the table. "You're distorting this," he yelled. I was assisting. Trump finally raised his voice, interrupting him. "You helped yourself," he exclaimed, "and left Americans to rot. That's the truth." In Kansas, a father who watched on television had his son's hand clutched tightly. His voice trembled as he whispered, This is the president we needed." Trump gazed down for an instant, then went on softly. "I didn't come back to Washington for revenge. I came back for justice, for every forgotten American." The room burst into applause once more. Even the lawmakers across the aisle couldn't conceal the respect on their faces. Raskin froze, sweat trickling down his cheeks. He didn't have any words left to say. The cameras zoomed in on Trump as he moved closer. "You thought this was going to be your victory speech?" he quipped. He shook his head. "But today, Jaime, all America will remember is how you collapsed beneath the burden of your deceit." Raskin glanced out into the chamber, but sympathetic faces were nowhere to be found. Only cold, disapproving stares. Trump turned back to the cameras for a final time. "To each American viewing, this is why I struggle. For your children, your families. I won't stop until we remove all of the corruption from Washington." All over the nation, millions were in tears. People who had lost faith in government were beginning to have hope again. And as the session ended, Trump exited the chamber, head held high. But it wasn't done. The following morning, the chamber would be filled once more, because Trump had promised the last piece of evidence was about to arrive. And it would finish Jaime Raskin's career for good. Reporters, legislators, and ordinary citizens filled every available seat in the chamber. The room hummed with anticipation. Everyone waited for the last proof Trump had promised, proof that would shake the nation to its very foundation. Raskin sat rigidly in his chair, his eyes flicking nervously towards the large wooden doors. Then they opened. A frail old woman entered, her hands shaking as she pressed a yellowed envelope to her chest. Trump moved to assist her to the witness stand. "This is Mrs. Thompson," Trump declared, his voice solemn. Her husband was a war hero. He died waiting for treatment because of Jaime's corruption. Gasps of shock ran through the room. Tears streaming down her face, Mrs. Thompson started to talk. "My husband trusted this government," she said, her voice shaking. "We pleaded for assistance, but Mr. Raskin's office diverted the money earmarked for veterans like him and shipped it abroad." Raskin hid his face in his hands. "This is not true," he muttered. "She's lying." Trump spun around, his eyes ablaze. "Don't you ever insult her," he growled. "This woman has more honor in her little finger than you'll ever possess." Across America, citizens sat in their living rooms, weeping openly as they watched the poignant testimony. "Enough is enough," Trump said, his voice breaking just slightly. "We have to fight for people like this. For real Americans." Raskin's calm finally broke. He leapt to his feet and screamed, "This is all a setup. You fabricated everything just to bring me down." But Trump didn't blink. He just grabbed a fat pile of papers and handed them to the chair of the committee. "These," he said in his even voice, "are bank documents and signed affidavits from whistleblowers who used to work for Jaime. This isn't my word against his, it's evidence." The large screens behind them came alive again. Video ran of Raskin dining in private with lobbyists, chuckling and boasting about milking America dry. The chamber exploded. "Resign!" a voice shouted. "Lock him up!" a voice shrieked. Mrs. Thompson wept openly as Trump stood beside her, one firm hand on her shoulder like a guardian. "This isn't politics anymore," Trump murmured, looking around the room. "This is about saving America's soul." Even some members of Raskin's own party were seated in stunned silence, their faces white. Raskin collapsed into his chair, muttering to himself. His booming voice had grown silent, a mere hollow sound. Trump addressed the cameras, his eyes bright and firm. "To every farmer, every soldier, every forgotten family, I see you. I hear you. And I will never stop fighting for you." His voice cracked with raw emotion. In living rooms all over the country, people dabbed at their eyes. "God bless you, President Trump," a grizzled old veteran whispered, his shaking hand rising to salute the television. Trump stabbed at Raskin one final time. "This is what happens when you betray America," he said. "Justice always finds you." He turned and started to exit. Reporters yelled questions, but he didn't halt. He only stopped to bend down and whisper to Mrs. Thompson, his tone low and commanding. "We're going to make America great again. For real this time." Phones buzzed around the nation as hashtags illuminated screens. #Trump the fighter, #Raskin resigned. But this wasn't the end. In his following speech, Trump vowed to expose the largest betrayal thus far. America waited with bated breath. The room was packed the following day. The atmosphere vibrated with tension as Trump climbed onto the podium, holding it tight. As he prepared to speak, a high, desperate voice echoed out. "Please, please don't do this." All eyes swiveled. A young woman stood in the aisle, her eyes streaming. She was Raskin's daughter. She lurched forward, grabbing hold of her father's arm. "Mr. President," she wept. "My dad messed up, but he's my dad. Please, don't annihilate him in front of the entire nation. Please don't embarrass us." For a moment, even Trump appeared taken aback. The room fell silent, the air thick with the force of her words. Then he moved closer to her, his tone soft but unyielding. "I see your pain," he said softly. "But what about the millions of daughters whose dads lost their jobs because of him? What about the families who lost everything while he became rich?" The girl sobbed, hiding her face in her father's shoulder. Across the country, viewers felt a lump rising in their own throats. "This isn't about revenge," Trump declared, his voice gentle and firm at the same time. "It's about justice. Trump again faced the cameras, his tone changing from soft to one of adamant steel. Jaime Raskin's corruption was not just about money, he started. He worked behind the scenes, undermining America's borders, secretly signing deals that allowed harmful elements to profit from our suffering. Off to his side, on the giant screens, footage played, grainy shots of Raskin in backroom meetings with foreign leaders. Footage never before seen. "You put at risk American lives, Jaime," Trump declared, his tone firm. "You wagered our safety, all to hold on to your authority." Raskin shook his head, his voice a trembling whisper. "This can't be happening." "Oh, but it is," Trump shot back, unflinching. The room was full of stifled screams. At home, mothers wrapped their arms around their children tighter. Veterans sat blankly in front of their television sets, experiencing an unnameable ache until now. Trump raised his hand, and his voice quavered slightly. "America believed in me to fight for her," he declared, "and I will never, ever betray her." The room burst into deafening applause. Even some of Trump's most vocal critics rose to their feet, applauding with tears shining in their eyes. Raskin slumped back in his seat, his head buried in his hands. His daughter held him tightly, crying uncontrollably. The self-assured congressman no more, this broken man stood before them. But Trump did not gloat. Trump did not smile. "Jaime," he whispered, "I don't hate you. I feel sorry for you. You could have served America, but you served yourself instead." The cameras focused on Trump's face, strong, but sad. "To all of the Americans watching tonight," Trump went on, his voice breaking as he spoke, "this is not the end. We will heal, we will come back, and we will make America great again." Phones across the country flashed with texts. "I'm crying. This man is a real leader. God bless President Trump. Raskin betrayed us all." As Trump exited the chamber, the country stood up. Not in hatred, but in hope. The battle wasn't yet won. But America felt, perhaps for the first time in a very long time, that she had gained her champion back. Trump resumed the podium, and the whole room lapsed into a silence so profound that even the scratching of pencils ceased. "This isn't easy for me," he began, his voice heavy with feeling. "I've exposed many corrupt politicians in my time. But Jaime, your betrayal cuts deeper than most." Raskin stared down at the floor, unable to lift his eyes. His daughter clutched his arm, whispering, "Dad, please, say something." Trump looked straight into the cameras. "You see this, America?" he declared. "While Jaime was making me out on television, he was quietly signing contracts sending American jobs abroad. Families lost everything. Fathers took their own lives in shame. Mothers wept themselves to sleep." He stopped, caught in his voice as he gazed out over the room. "And children," he whispered, choking him for an instant. Jordan went to bed hungry. A middle-aged man sitting in his threadbare recliner rubbed away tears from his face. "This man gets our anguish," he spoke softly to his wife. Trump paused and went on, his voice softer now. "This isn't politics, it's personal. For every American who hurting while Jaime getting richer and richer." Raskin finally stood up. His hands were trembling. "Mr. President," he croaked, "you're wrecking my life. You've embarrassed me before my family and the entire world. Isn't that enough?" Trump's eyes narrowed, his tone icy and distinct. "Wrecking your life?" he shot back. "What about the lives you wrecked, Jaime? What about the veterans who died waiting for treatment? The factory workers who pleaded for a second chance? Was their suffering not enough for you?" Raskin's lips quivered. Tears spilled down his face. "You thought you'd silence me today," Trump declared, his voice rising, "but instead, you've been silenced." The audience erupted in applause. People who had once doubted him stood up, clapping and shouting together, USA! 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 Across America, viewers wept openly as Trump spoke with raw, unfiltered passion. And to the American people who are watching this, Trump declared, his eyes steady, I assure you, this ends here. No more corruption. No more betrayal. We will reclaim our country. As the chamber grew to a white heat, Trump raised his hand, and the room went silent once more. But Jaime, he whispered, his voice surprisingly soft, I won't destroy you. Not because you have earned mercy, but because America is better than an eye for an eye. Raskin gasped, and his daughter hugged him closer, weeping into his shoulder. I'm offering you a choice, Trump said. Quit now. Apologize to the people that you hurt, or I will drop everything, every hidden detail, so the world can see exactly who you are. Raskin collapsed into his chair, shaking as he openly wept. America, Trump declared, his voice swelling with fervor, we are greater than corruption. We are stronger than betrayal. And together, he paused, allowing the words to sink deep into every heart that watched. Together, we will make this great nation great again. Families wept across the land, farmers, veterans, mothers. They each felt the burden and the promise in his words. And at that moment, a nation started healing. The whole chamber remained absolutely silent. Everyone in America was holding their breath. Raskin sat slumped over, his daughter hanging onto his arm. His hands were shaking as Trump's words were replaying over and over in his head. Resign today. Say sorry to the people you hurt, or I publish all. Cameras zoomed in on Raskin's face. For an instant, he appeared like a drowning man in his own shame. Raskin stuttered, his voice reedy and fractured. I resign. Gasp filled the room. A murmur ran round the room low and fast, like a wave, as reporters struggled to flash out breaking news alerts. Trump nodded slowly. That's the first sensible decision you've ever made, Jaime. Right across America, Americans cried and wiped away their tears. This is justice, whispered a woman who worked in a factory in Ohio. This is what we prayed for, a mother hugged her child. Raskin's daughter cried quietly into his shoulder. Trump's voice softened as he turned back one final time. America can forgive you, Jaime, he said. But history never forgets. And with that, he turned and left the chamber amid chants of USA, USA, USA. Outside, the streets were crowded. Thousands had come to witness this historic moment unspool on giant screens. When Trump appeared in sight, the crowd erupted into deafening applause. He held up his hand for silence, his face grave, and started speaking. Today wasn't about me, declared Trump, his tone full of raw emotion. It was about you, the forgotten Americans who need honesty, strength, and respect from the people you trust to lead. Tears shone in the eyes of individuals who had waited decades for this moment. Some wept openly, waving their signs aloft. Trump fights for us. America first. Trump's voice broke as he went on. For too long, you've been betrayed, he declared. But I promise you, this is the beginning of a new chapter. Together, we will drain the swamp, heal our nation, and make America great again. Even veteran journalists with reputations for icy objectivity wiped away their tears. The chants became louder. We love you, Trump. We love you. Trump smiled weakly, tiredly. But in his eyes, you could discern the burden of it all he carried. He stepped back into the Capitol and stood still for a moment, his eyes on the American flag. It's not over, he muttered to himself. The fight has just begun. Around the country, families gathered before their TVs, radios, and phones. In diners, living rooms, and small offices, Strangers embraced one another, tears running down their cheeks. "This is the America we missed," an old Texas woman whispered, her hands at her heart. In the chamber, Raskin remained slumped in his seat. His resignation letter was bunched in his shaking hands. The man who had attempted to bring down Trump now resembled a figure of all that was broken in Washington. Trump did not look back, however. He had greater wars to fight, wars for the nation's heart and soul. And throughout America, for the first time in years, people had a hope so strong it reduced millions to uncontrolled tears. Trump went back to the Oval Office later that evening. One of his aides handed him a note. "Sir," said the aide quietly, "Raskin's resignation is making the headlines across the globe, but I have something else. He wants to see you in private." Trump's eyes narrowed a little as he looked up. "He wants to see me?" "Yes, Mr. President, he says it's urgent." Across America, families were still stuck to live transmissions. Newscasters whispered in tones as they narrated every momentous development. Trump adjusted his tie and proceeded to the modest conference room. There, Raskin slumped on a chair, pale-faced, with red, swollen eyes from constant weeping. "Mr. President," he whispered hoarsely, "you've won. I've lost everything, my career, my reputation. But please, spare my family. Don't release any more evidence." Trump stared at him for a long moment, unblinking. "Jaime," he said finally, his voice low, "you betrayed this country in ways most people will never fully understand." He paused. "But I'm not here to destroy families. I'm here to rebuild America." Raskin collapsed completely, crying into his hands as Trump spun and went away without saying another word. The next day, Trump stepped out onto the lawn of the White House. Thousands of his fans were assembled there. Millions more watched it live, hearts racing with excitement. "My fellow Americans," Trump started out, his voice full of emotion. "Yesterday, we saw what corruption looks like when it is pulled out of the shadows and into the daylight." He stopped and slowly surveyed the crowd. "But today," he went on, "it's not about being divided. It's about being united, about justice, and about healing." A silence fell over the thousands gathered. "America might be bruised," Trump declared, "but we are not broken." The crowd cheered and applauded. Trump's voice became louder, ringing out over the crowded lawn and into living rooms across millions of homes. "I will fight every single day to give you a government that works for you. Not for lobbyists, not for foreign powers, but for the hard-working men and women who built this great nation." At the front of the crowd, an old veteran dabbed away tears. He leaned over to the person next to him and whispered, "This is the president we've been waiting for." Throughout the country, tears streamed as Trump concluded with a resounding vow. "I will never stop fighting for America," he told the crowd, "and together, we will make this country stronger, safer, and prouder than ever before." As he descended from the platform, waves of "USA, USA, USA" echoed throughout. In small towns and large cities as well, Americans clapped in their living rooms and on their phones, wiping away tears, as if they were standing on the lawn beside him. An Iowa farmer spoke to his wife in a soft voice. "He's not just speaking. He's fighting for us." On social media, videos of Trump's speech went viral, having captions such as, "The moment America started healing." Back in Washington, Raskin quietly packed up his office. The once powerful congressman now looked like just a man swallowed by his own greed. Meanwhile, in a conference room, Trump met with his team, his face serious. "The fight isn't over," he said firmly. "Raskin was only the beginning. America deserves better, and we're going to give it to them." All over the country, for the first time in years, millions felt something they thought they'd lost forever: hope. But just when it appeared Raskin's tale was done, He made one final desperate attempt to rescue himself. That morning, a leaked audio recording began making the rounds on the internet. In it, Raskin blamed Trump for orchestrating the whole takedown as some sort of personal vendetta. The media fawned. Headlines shrieked, "Raskin strikes back, is this the real story?" But Trump did not blink. During a press conference, he remained composed as reporters yelled over one another. "Mr. President," one asked, "is there any basis to Raskin's allegations?" Trump's gaze into the cameras was steady and unflinching. "The only truth here," he declared, "is that Jaime Raskin betrayed America, and no desperate lies can erase the suffering he inflicted on hard-working Americans." Then, without missing a beat, he dropped a bombshell. "I'll release my full private investigation report tonight at 8 p.m., he said. "And America will see, once and for all, who's telling the truth." The nation held its breath. At exactly 8 p.m., Trump stepped onto the stage. It felt as if the entire country froze in place, families huddled together around TVs and phones, waiting. "Tonight," Trump began, "I'm going to let America decide." Behind him, a massive screen flickered to life. A succession of whistleblower testimonies rolled. Workers, veterans, even ex-aides of Raskin, all of them addressing the camera directly. Their voices broke as they testified about betrayal and sorrow. A widow of a veteran, tears flowing down her face, sobbed out, "He promised to take care of us. He betrayed us instead." "He said he would assist us," the widow of the veteran wept. "Instead, he robbed us." Trump didn't interrupt. He didn't attempt to talk over them. He just stood there, silent, resolute, letting their hurt and reality exist in the quiet. When the last testimony was finished, he breathed and moved forward. "Jaime believed he could bring me down," Trump spoke gently. "But this was never ever about me. It was always about you." His voice became firmer, with determination. "This ends tonight. The swamp is being drained, justice is being restored, and we are taking our country back." Across America, tears were wiped away. In living rooms, kitchens, and break rooms, they stood up and cheered, some murmuring prayers, others yelling, "Thank you, Mr. President." The very next morning, Jaime Raskin formally resigned from Congress in shame. The news traveled like wildfire. Later that night, Trump spoke to the country one final time. "My fellow Americans," he started, his voice trembling, "we are stronger today because we confronted the truth. Together, we've taken the first step toward healing, toward rebuilding what was lost." In all of the major cities, crowds were out. Flags were waving. Voices chanted, "USA! USA!" Trump put a hand to his heart. "I didn't return to the White House for power," he said. "I returned to fight for you, and I vow I will never give up." In living rooms throughout the nation, tears rolled down cheeks. Even those who had once questioned him now muttered to themselves, "He's actually doing it. He's saving this nation." When Trump strode away from the podium, the cameras closed in. One tear streamed down his cheek. And across America, the people cried with him.